she's staring at.
The Atari Jaguar. People still start these things by saying, do they? It's been a while, but first hitting the markets in 1993 and pretty much the last video game console from Jack Tramiel's Atari Corporation. This was another one of them newfangled systems at the time that I've seen mostly in gaming magazines, the occasional comic book ad, and maybe there was a commercial here and there somewhere. But the alleged 64-bit powerhouse and final proper video game console from Atari before they went, well, nobody I knew had one of these things, and to this day I have not seen nor touched an actual Atari Jaguar console, which naturally begs the question, how in the Sam hell am I reviewing Tempest 2000 for the Atari Jaguar? Well, in 2022, Atari released a compilation called Atari 50, developed by Digital Eclipse, which is a tremendous package containing lots of historical tidbits on the history of the old Atari company, including a bunch of video interviews, product scans, and other things of that nature. One of the better Atari compilations I've played in like forever, and the historical look back alone makes this worth a purchase. Hell, any compilation that features Ninja Golf on its gaming roster is worth a grand old nod in my book. But anyway, Atari 50 features a wide variety of Atari games covering a wide variety of Atari consoles, including several from the Atari Jaguar library, which I believe makes this the first time such games were available to the masses in this format. And Atari 50 has a bunch of these, and hey, there's a bunch of video fodder for the future. And that's how we're playing these games today. So naturally, this would be tainting the experience somewhat because I'm not using the original Jaguar controller. You know, the one with the number pad that's overly huge and looks awkward to hold. Though I imagine it'd still be better than the three-pronged nightmare that is the stock Nintendo 64 controller. Besides, it's official emulation, I'm told it's fairly accurate, and Digital Eclipse usually does a fine job with these sort of compilations, so I figured, sure, why not? Let's sample some Jaguar games. I'm excited, genuinely excited. I've never touched any Jaguar games before, so let's have some fun with this, shall we? Anyway, Tempest 2000. If you played other Tempest titles such as Tempest X3 on the PlayStation 1 or Tempest 4000 on some of the recent consoles, or hell, maybe you're one of the 3 people in the universe who's played Tempest 3000 on something called a Nuon, all those games are basically derivatives of Tempest 2000, a Jeff Mintner remake of the classic Tempest arcade game. They recently released a compilation under his name, and you have no idea how many times I fumbled on the word Mintner. But I digress. Tempest 2000 basically supercharges everything while maintaining the core gameplay of that original arcade game. You control a claw device thing around a tube and shooting baddies before they get you. Once all enemies are cleared from the tube, you're making your way down to tube and onto the next tube to do the whole tube thing all over again. All the while you have some sweet techno tunes playing in the background and lots of bright, pretty, seizure-inducing colors up the foreground. A total attack on the senses, and it's amazing. Allegedly. Tempest 2000 offers 3 modes of play for the single player. The main Tempest 2000 mode, Traditional Tempest, and Tempest Plus. Every mode has the same overall premise. You start a new game by picking a stage. The higher the stage you pick, the more bonus points you earn when you clear that stage, and your goal from there is to clear the tunnel of all attacking enemies before moving on to the next. And this keeps going until you either clear all 100 levels, or until you eventually run out of lives. Tempest 2000 is naturally the main mode of Tempest 2000, obviously, and amplifies things by giving you power-ups every so often, ranging from AI droids and particle lasers to jumping things and possible warp gimmicks that, if you collect enough of them, will take you to a bonus world where you fly through rings for bonus points. Oh goody, another goddamn game where I have to fly through motherfucking rings. I feel tempted to reference some other 64 game with a similar premise, but that game came out years after this did, so I won't bother going further. All of these while lots of colors and pop-up text blast away in your face and drive you mad. Now if you prefer your Tempest to be more low-key, you have Traditional Tempest, which plays more like the original arcade Tempest. No power-ups, no warps, just classic tube shooting action with some pop-up text and moving camera bits, though you can choose to go for a more fixed camera option if you prefer. Tempest Plus is similar to traditional Tempest, but you could choose to play with a second player in co-op or a computer-controlled AI droid, which is nice, I guess. There's also a 2-player Tempest duel mode, which should be fun. You duel in a tube and such. There's split screen and that sort of thing. Tempest 2000 came out on a console that didn't have any sort of analog input, like a mouse or paddle controller type of deal, so you were stuck with the D-pad. And the D-pad is adequate at best. Adequate in the main game. In the ring levels, it's shit. They're too overly sensitive, and they're not inverted. Also, speed up after speed up after speed up, and all the text fills the screen, and you can't see anything. What the fuck is this? Come on. Dude, you're lucky Winamp came out in 97, otherwise I would have sent it to whip this llama's ass. And I'm like one of the 3 people left on the world that still uses Winamp in 2024. I mean, Control in general works well enough to move your claw thing around and is responsive enough to keep up with all the frantic twitchy action that defines Tempest's whole existence. It's the whole kill or be killed, get the odd power up here and there, pull the trigger on your 1 use per level super zapper thing to clear the clutter for a short while sort of gameplay that makes things interesting and sometimes intense. And yeah, at first it's a bit overwhelming, perhaps seemingly impossible, especially in later levels, but the thing with these old style arcade titles is that you keep going at it, eventually you get a little further, you start to do a little better, and things eventually start to look up that you want to keep going. And that's where the appeal of Tempest starts to suck you in a little. And when that doesn't work, you throw in a bunch of colors, acid-infused backgrounds, lots of flashy colors, and pop-up text to drive your senses further into madness. In theory, at least. By this point, I've already played Tempest 4000, which came out a few years ago and throws more visual effects your way, and Tempest 2000, by way of being the first of its kind and also the earliest entry, seems rather tame in the sensory department, but by 1993 standards, this would have been quite the trip. In any case, the game maintains a relatively clean look, there's little to no lag or slowdown in regards to the action or gameplay, and being able to choose an active or fixed camera perspective with the select button is a nice option to have. Sound design is pretty solid, lots of catchy tunes to greet you, lots of loud sound effects which vary depending on the mode you play. Tempest 2000 has nice crisp sound effects, while traditional tries to replicate the arcade sound effects to varying degrees of success, let's put it that way. And of course you have a sensual voiceover to supercharge your zapper. I'm guessing that's part of the acid trip this game provides, but again, I digress. Overall, well, it's Tempest 2000. Some would say the only good game on the Atari Jaguar, which I feel maybe is being overly dramatic. But thankfully, they eventually moved this thing onto other platforms and other formats before reviving this initial iteration as part of the Atari 50 set, which is still a fun little game to play today. And if you're into these sort of Twitch tube shooter things with lots of colors and flashing bits, then Tempest 2000 may very well be right up your alley. Or up your shaft, whichever you prefer. What?